Hey folks, I'm Ian Lampert. I have a doctorate in education and human development, and I'm a credentialed admissions counselor. What I want to do today is help some folks who might not know about a fantastic resource understand how to optimize that resource. It is very difficult to get into a top 20 college right now. Things are as competitive as they've ever been. And with the test optional movement gaining so much steam, there are many folks who are wondering how they can stand out. Luckily, there are two services that can give you a way to get an edge against the rest of the pack. InitialView and Vericant. Both of these services follow a simple premise. If colleges can put a face and a voice to the rest of the application, they're more likely to humanize you and less likely to reject you outright. So these services give you an opportunity to have an interview or to pitch a video to some colleges directly. I want to walk through them one at a time and explain how they could be of use to you. But first, let's talk about InitialView. They're structured in one of two ways. InitialView either has options for American students, where you're able to give a 90-second elevator pitch directly to your college and explain something that isn't clear from the rest of your application, or perhaps highlight parts of that application. And the second thing that InitialView lets you do is give a unscripted conversation if you're an international student. Now, why does this matter? If you're an American student, there are a lot of folks who might be a whole lot like you, but perhaps you've got a more eloquent way of storytelling, and perhaps that storytelling could be very compelling for the college admissions officer to hear. If you're an international student, there might be some doubts about your capacity to converse in a fluent way that meets college standards in English, which, if you're international, might not be your native tongue. This proves to the college directly that not only can you speak, but you've got a beautiful felicity of expression, and they're going to want to carry on a conversation with you. It shows that you're an ideal candidate. Vericant is different. They also have two parts to them. First, they have a speech structure where you'll start off in an interview studio. If COVID protocols prevent you from being in that studio, then instead you'll probably do it from your home like this. After you're in that interview studio or have your setup the way that it should be, they give you a picture, and you're supposed to have 3 minutes time to discuss that picture with the professional interviewer. If you've ever taken the CEL pit before, which is the Canadian immigration test, it's similar to that. You have to describe, using advanced vocabulary, what you see in that picture, and then say what that picture means to you. After that, you'll have an in-depth conversation about yourself. You'll have a chance to answer some questions, spotlighting key parts of your application. Then they'll ask you about studying abroad and your universities of choice. And then finally, you'll have up to 2 minutes to just talk about anything you want. It's a free speech section. That's the first service that Vericant offers. The second service is writing. You have 3 different options, either analytical, practical, or creative. And after you choose one of those options, then you use handwriting. So this isn't typed out, it's with your hands, with pen and paper, to answer that question. This is again to show that you can converse in a fluent and appropriate way in English. So okay, you've now learned about the services that they offer. Some people might ask, can you do both? The answer is yes, you could. You might do both and then send the one that you like more. It is not common practice to send both InitialView and Vericant to your colleges of choice. Not all colleges also outright accept InitialView and a Vericant, so you should probably check on them to see if the college does. And if the college doesn't list it, then you can still reach out to an admissions officer and say, I'd like to send this in, would you be open to hearing it? And I think that a good number of admissions officers might say yes. Does not hurt to ask. So I want to give you some tips. I think there's 6 tips that you can use to excel in these interviews. So let's walk through these 6 tips. The first one is to use a website called Udly. Udly is a relatively new website. It was made by a friend of mine, Varun. He's phenomenal at the work that he wants to do. And he wants to create a AI coach for your public speaking. when you upload a practice video of yours or record using their browser interface, it's going to analyze that video and it's going to return with things like your rate of speaking, how many words per minute, whether that rate feels fast or slow or right down the middle for them, your filler words such as you know, like, things that are distracting, such as those. And it's also going to tell you about non-inclusive language. Things like guys when you could say y'all. Words that have fallen out of vogue because they're offensive to certain groups. These are words that your college interviewer might be especially concerned about, and so you might show some red flags to them without meaning it. Udemy can check the delivery and the content for you. Highly useful website. It's free for now, so make sure you jump on that. Second piece of advice is to present yourself well. Get a haircut, dress up, show yourself at your best in a professional way, like you meant to be there in front of them. Third, when you practice answering these questions, think to yourself, what am I trying to communicate with this answer? Just pausing for a moment and saying out loud, I'm trying to show that I have the ability to create change under duress. And then answering the question means you've got that purpose. And that purpose gives you a pathway for the rest of the answer. So always think about that. Fourth, create a list of green lights and red flags for institutions. Think to yourself, what might this answer indicate? For example, when I was in an interview for a job over a decade ago, I answered a question in a way that showed an obvious red flag. When they asked me, what are your weaknesses? I said, my weakness is listening to authority figures that I don't like. That's true, but that's a red flag for that institution because I might have to get along with a professor that I don't like. However, there's a green light answer that I gave in a different interview when they asked, what's something that you've done to help bring together people who had differing opinions? And I could talk about my experience as a debate coach, trying to show both sides of an issue and the importance of being open-minded, even if you're not going to change your beliefs, at least you can understand where others are coming from, which means it's better to persuade them. And when I explained that anecdote, that is a green light for the institution, because they want to facilitate dialogue just like that, where people are open to things. Make that list for yourself. The fifth piece of advice I have for you is to use the STAR format. The STAR format is situation, task, action, and result. You can look into this format in a greater degree of depth. What I suggest is to create a list of 5 to 10 30-second anecdotes, each of which follows that STAR format. A situation is a recently challenging situation that you were in. Task is what was asked of you, what task were you supposed to achieve. Action is what you chose to do, and result is what happened as a result of the action you selected. If you apply that framework to those questions, then you're likely to give a complete answer, and that's what people want. The sixth and final piece of advice I have for you is be responsive to the question. Be responsive to the question. What do I mean by that? You might have a list of that 5 to 10 stories and feel the need to shoehorn them in. But if they don't perfectly apply, you're going to come across as inauthentic, insincere. And that is a red flag for these institutions. They want someone who can respond in the moment to things and show the authentic version of themselves. So always think about being responsive. It really, really matters. I hope that this little primer helped you out a lot, that you see the value of InitialView or Vericant, and that you've got some idea of what to do when you're preparing for this. Once again, I'm Iain. Thank you so much. If this helps one person out there, it was a good use of my time.